Well, hello there. Let's go on an adventure, shall we?
Going on a field trip for private practice skills. So there's two main reasons why I decided to do a field trip today. One is my family just got back in town from a weekend away, which is lovely, but I have this teeny window that I can film today. And the second reason is it's a beautiful day and I just want to be outside in my teeny window. So we're mashing those things up together and we're going on a field trip. We're going to do a Q&A today where we're talking all about early career related questions. I posted a poll on my Instagram page this morning when we were coming back into town, asking if you had any questions related to graduate school period of time or that kind of pre-licensure early career phase. And some questions have started coming through, so I'm excited to take a look at those and answer the ones that I feel equipped to answer. Now, because of the field trip nature of this week's video, I'm probably not going to do a traditional podcast version of this video, but there will likely be an extended version of the video, so I'll link to where you can find that below. I just turned on to La Jolla Shores Lane, which if you've ever been down to the south end of Black's Beach, not the nude part, but the southern part of it, this is where the house is that leads to the mushroom house. If you've ever heard of the mushroom house, there's literally a little mushroom on Black's Beach. And it connects to these little fancy houses up here. Can I park here? I don't think so. That says no parking past the sign. Oh, there's a spot. One spot with my name on it. I will post where you can get here down below in case you're interested. The first question that I saw pop up was two-parter: how to deal with imposter syndrome, and is it too early to identify a niche? Big questions and very common questions. I'm gonna go this way because it's a little less busy. So speaking to the imposter syndrome, I know I can put it simply, but I know it's not simple. But basically, embrace who you are. Embrace your strengths, embrace your values, your skills, whatever is important to you and what makes you you, and let those be the things that you emphasize. I mean, of course, we always can work on our growth edges. That should be important to us. But I think what happens with imposter syndrome is we become overly focused on the areas where we might feel like they're weaknesses, things that we're not informed about. We see that somebody else is really great at something, it seems, and think that we're supposed to be just as good as they are, and that's where the imposter syndrome sets in. And then as far as whether it's too soon to start identifying your niche, it's never too soon to start identifying your niche. I mean, you can do that anytime, but on the flip side of that, please don't feel pressure that you need to identify your niche right now. Take your time, you'll find it. Whatever your niche is that you land on, there is a really good chance that it will change later. So I don't ever want anyone to feel like once you find your niche, you've locked it down and you're stuck for, whatever, decades of your career. Hopefully knowing that your niche can change can release some of the pressure from feeling like you have to lock in your niche and you can never change it, because then it might feel like it's impossible to ever peg it down. I love this next question. It feels related. How do you bring up to your supervisor that you'd like to work with a specific population? And on the one hand, I hear that question, I go, you just bring it up. And in an ideal world, hopefully, the supervisor might say, oh, I'm so interested, tell me more, what's your interest about? Or maybe also, is there anything about the current population you're working with that isn't working for you? Having a curious approach to learn more, and if it's accessible to add more of a certain population on your caseload, then to do it. But I know from hearing stories from you all especially that it's not always so simple. It's very common for supervisors to give pushback, and that's unfortunate. So if you're in that situation where you're getting that pushback, of course, first reflect for yourself. What is it about your existing population that you want to pivot away from? But also hold space for validating what you're experiencing. You may just be figuring out what fits for you, and your supervisor might be adding folks to your caseload that aren't a good fit. If I were bringing it up with a supervisor that seemed to give me a bit of pushback, I probably would try to kind of prepare a case in advance, hey, I know you've been setting me up with such and such types of clients, and here's been my experience so far. I know I could keep working with them, but here's why I think that's not the best idea, and here's why I think I'd rather work with such and such types of clients instead. You shouldn't have to do any of that, unfortunately. And if your supervisor is unkind, then that's probably more on them and not about anything about how you brought it up. Because if you're in supervision, even if you're not great at bringing up something like this, your supervisor should be equipped to support you and help you identify what you need, what's going on, rather than being combative or anything along those lines. If your supervisor feels like they're invalidating your interests, then that says more about your supervisor. Now, it's not for me to tell you what to do if that's the situation, but that's probably not your fault. Let's just put it that way. The next question was about how many clients a week you should see and how to know when your caseload is full. And that is such an individualized, personalized question. So my best advice for that is to use a trial and error approach. If you have the time and access to kind of just slowly scale up, add more clients little by little. If you feel like you have more bandwidth, keep adding more clients. And if there's a point where you feel like it's starting to feel a little bit stretchy and you're not loving how it feels, push the pause button on adding more clients, give it a minute, and then if it still feels stretchy, it could be a good time to scale back. You might not necessarily need to drop a bunch of clients. Don't abandon your clients, but as clients kind of graduate naturally, maybe see if you really want to add more clients, and you kind of add a few more and then wait till a few more graduate and you can start to find a sweet spot. It's also going to shift likely depending on what kinds of clients you work with. Like, for example, maybe you can see 15 individual clients per week, but maybe you can't run 15 groups per week. For example, I couldn't. So you might also experiment with things like modality or what types of clients you work with, because maybe you can take on more or less depending on the type of work that you're doing. But just explore, give yourself permission to let it be as small or big as needed. Another question that came up quite a bit is the classic question that everyone asks me: how do I get clients? How do I fill my caseload? And if only we could just bottle it up and give everyone a full caseload immediately. I think what can be really tempting with a question like this is a lot of therapists will have a pat answer to how to fill your practice because it's probably whatever they did to fill their practice. And I think the best advice I can give is to educate yourself on what tools are available, because there are so many. I will leave some links below to more information on where to learn about some of those, and try to find where those existing tools align and fit with who you are, your values, what's sustainable for you, what makes sense for your lifestyle, things like that. So the next question was kind of in a similar vein of how to transition from lower rate sliding scale fee clients to full fee clients, or raising your fee and keeping your practice full. And it's kind of similar. I mean, it's marketing strategy. So that's where I advocate for niching down. Even if you don't necessarily have a singular niche, it can be helpful to specialize a little bit, because I've said this before, but I'll say it again. If you advertise that you specialize in something very specific, then if somebody is in need of an expert in that specific thing, they're going to be doing a Google search, or they're going to be asking a friend for an anxiety therapist. Let's say they're dealing with panic disorder. I want to see an anxiety therapist. They're probably not going to be rate shopping for the cheapest therapist they can find. They're going to be Googling or asking a friend, asking around for who's the best anxiety therapist around here. And if you advertise yourself as a therapist specializing in anxiety, then you have a lot more flexibility in where you set your rate, because there are going to be folks who are just looking for the person who specializes in that and who can access that price point. And something I forgot to mention for the question on how long to expect it to take to fill your caseload, I mean, I mentioned that it depends depending on if, let's say you have a lower rate or you accept insurance versus if you have a higher rate. Generally, it takes a little longer to build a marketing strategy if you have that higher price point. I mean, I've heard stories from folks who just immediately after getting paneled with a certain insurance company would have multiple intakes per week, and they might be full in just a few weeks or a month. That may not be most people's experience, but it could be possible to fill up in a month or even 3 months if you have a very low rate, or you're accepting insurance, or you're with some sort of third-party payer, some kind of support network like Alma, or there's a bunch like that. But if you're charging out of pocket, especially if you have a higher rate, then it may take some time. Usually the time is related to building up your marketing strategy. I mean, let's take SEO as an example. It's going to take some time before Google gets your SEO vibe. So your practice may not fill up within a month of you first launching your website. But if you use the right strategies, you might fill up within 6 months. I made it to the beach. I see wet footprints on the ground. I'm like 95% sure that you can't hear me right now. I used to hang out here all the time in college. I look for any excuse to come down here now. So today's the day, private practice skills field trip day. Your sign got covered up. Okay, that was really fun, but now I actually have to start heading back to my car so I can pick up my dog. There were 2 questions about extra certifications. One was how to find low-cost certifications, and another one was about which ones are worth it. And here's my overall thoughts about certifications. If there's a certification that you genuinely want, go for it. You just would love to learn about that thing, or it just excites you to be certified in a certain thing, do that certification. If you feel like you need a certification in order to be legit or to fill your practice, unless it's a particular certification that you need in order to practice the thing that you hope to practice, you don't need to do it, or you could save up and do it later. Please do not hear that as me saying don't get qualified to do whatever work you want to do. Learn about what certifications are required to do what you want to do and get those. And then as far as finding resources that are more affordable to get like the actual training that you want, there are so many more resources now than there used to be when I always say that. I feel like I say it all the time now. Back when I was in grad school, but it's so true. Like, podcasts didn't even exist in 2008, I don't think. I think the best strategy to find the most affordable continuing ed and other similar resources is, if there's a certain area that you want to learn some more in, to reach out to other therapists who are already knowledgeable in that area and ask them what trainings and resources they actually found useful, and if they have any tips on finding trainings that are more affordable in that vein. Or maybe it's a book, or something that is a little bit easier to access. All right, I'm definitely going to be going uphill for this last bit, but I got to get back to my car. The price you pay. So the next couple questions are a little bit more about my own personal experience, and one of them said something like, what looks different now as a veteran therapist compared to as a newbie? First of all, I don't think I'm a veteran therapist, but I have been practicing for a little while. I do not feel like a newbie anymore. Oh gosh, for me personally, things that are different, not freaking out before every single session. I think the thing that I did that was the most different was I felt completely unconfident, and I coped with that by over-preparing for every single session. And now it feels a lot more like an art form. Like, you learn about what works well, what techniques work well, and then you kind of decide for this particular client, this particular moment, what subset of those techniques are the best fit. Where does it make sense to sort of color outside the lines within ethical boundaries, and sort of improvise a bit. So I feel a lot more free in that sense now. Okay, there was another question about whether I ever experienced imposter syndrome. Yes, all the time, still do. But yeah, it was way worse in the beginning. And I coped with it then by just trying to pretend to be someone that I wasn't. Pretend that I knew more than I did. I can still be this, but I was definitely a know-it-all in grad school and post-grad. I was the first to correct when someone got that DSM thing wrong, or those little tidbits, or I know better than you. I was totally that. And now I cope with it more by just trying to come back to my center. What are my values? What am I actually good at? I think I touched on this earlier in this video, so I won't belabor it, but I just accept that I'm not perfect. I don't know everything. Or I try to practice accepting it. I don't always do it well, but that's the goal, at least. That's the value. And the last question that I'll tackle for today largely so I can catch my breath, but also because I'm running out of time, is how to make a living and avoid burnout. It's such an important question. I wish I had like the one blanket answer of like, everyone just do X, Y, Z and then you're good. I do think it's accessible for all of us, but I know it's not always an easy path, and some folks are going to have a harder path than others. But what I will say is find your people. Find the people who are cheering you on. Some of us may have to look harder than others to find those people. Sometimes it might be people that you don't know face to face. It might be virtual. It might even be podcasts or authors or YouTubers. Surround yourself with people who can help you access the tools to get there. Sometimes it's skills. Sometimes it's, talking you through your imposter syndrome or whatever your snag points are. That quest is a worthwhile quest rather than trying to do it all on your own. I'm really out of breath. See, look how far I came. All right, I'm gonna go back in my car, pull away from that giant mansion I parked in front of, and pick up my dog. But thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was fun for you. I just selfishly enjoyed going on a field trip together with our parasailing friends and the beautiful views.
And before we close, my dog and I would like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes helps with all of your practice management needs, from scheduling to notes to billing. They have a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform and so much more. If you'd like to check out TherapyNotes, you can get 2 months to try it for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video.
Right, Sophie? Sophie. Oh, she's a good girl.
That's how you know she had the best time. She can't even move now that she's here.
You just, oh.